everyone, it's Alice, and today we're gonna do some more book recommendations based on aesthetics. This is a part of a video series I'm doing where I am recommending books based on different kinds of aesthetics. And I love when book recommendations include something visual in them in addition to someone just talking about the book and like what they liked. I love when there's something visual in addition. So I'm also making mood boards to go with each of my recommendations, and I am basing all of this just on like my own interpretation of the books and how I feel like they would look like, I guess, and what I can remember from them. And yeah, today's theme is endless summer because 'tis the season. Now, you may know that summer is not like my favorite season. I cannot deal with the heat at all, and today it's actually pretty hot outside. It's that kind of heat where like the air is pressing in a way. I don't really know how to explain it, but I hope that it's gonna rain or something because it sort of eases it. And that feeling when it rains after it's been like this is amazing. So there are some good things about summer as well. And I do really like books set in summer because I think it can add a lot of atmosphere to a book. And so I do love summer reading, even though I don't love like when things get a little bit too hot. I don't really know why I'm complaining because I don't live in a place that's like super hot, but it's too hot for me, I feel, and it's just getting warmer and warmer. Anyways, I'm just rambling now. We should probably just get into it because I have a lot of books to show you. The first book that I have is one of my favorite books that I read last year. It is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, and this is a historical fiction mystery set in the 1970s, although we do also go back before that to explore some of the backstory of some of the characters. So it sort of jumps around a little bit, but the main story is set in the 1970s. The setting of this is a summer camp, which is an excellent setting for a mystery, I feel. And it starts off when one of the camp counselors discovers an empty bunk and that a girl has gone missing. Now, this isn't just any girl, it actually happens to be the daughter of the people who own the camp. And to make it even worse, this isn't the first child that they've had that has gone missing, because 14 years earlier, their son disappeared and just sort of vanished in a similar kind of way. There is a lot going on in this book, and we're exploring both what happened with the current disappearance, but it also drags up a lot of stuff with the previous disappearance, and they never figured out what happened. So it's obviously weird that it's happened twice. And so we spend a lot of the book exploring the mystery and all of the characters involved. I think calling this a literary mystery is the perfect way to sum it up, because it does have plot, but it also has a lot of character focus, which I absolutely loved. And the setting of it adds a lot of atmosphere to the story, which is just excellent. Liz Moore is also just an excellent author. Like, she's one of my favorites for sure. And the whole vibe of this book with like 1970s summer camp, the forest, and the mystery, with the added feel of like a small town thing going on in it, it's just the perfect blend. It's mysterious and a little dark sometimes, and it is a complicated story, but it never felt messy to me, and it has like a nostalgic tinge to it that I really, really enjoyed. I'd really recommend it. It's an excellent novel. It is a little bit of a slower one, so it's kind of like a slow burn, so you have to be into that. But if you like sort of slow burning literary mysteries with a lot of family secrets and a lot of tension, this is perfect. Secondly, we have a little bit of a different one, but this is also historical fiction. It's A Ladder to the Sky by John Boyne, and this starts off when we meet our main character working as a waiter in Berlin in 1988, and then we follow this main character for decades after, so this one spans over quite a long period of time. Our main character in this book is Maurice, who is very good looking, very charming, and wants above all to be a famous author. But unfortunately for him and for everyone around him, he doesn't have any talent. So what he does is he basically ends up stealing the idea for his first book by getting close to this desperately lonely old man, and he uses this first book to sort of rise to fame and fortune, and he's moving about in the highest like parts of the literary world, and it's everything he's ever wanted, but of course, the higher you climb, the further you have to fall. Now, a huge thing to note about this book is that if you don't like reading about unlikable characters, you will not like this book, because the main character in here is horrible. Like, he's a terrible, terrible person. And in some ways it's infuriating to read about him, but I actually really like reading about unlikable characters, and I feel like this one does it really well. It is a character study in a lot of ways, and we're following this person through most of his life, and getting to know him is both like shocking and fascinating. Now, the story doesn't all take place specifically in summer since we're spanning a lot of years, but parts of it have a very summery feel to it because of the different settings, and the vibe is very much like luxury, European, sharp, and of course literary. But there's also like a huge theme in this book is the main character's ambition and manipulation and greed. And he's such a terrible, terrible guy on the inside, but on the outside everything appears well. And the book is really all about peeling back all of these layers on him. Speaking of luxury, this next one is a very glamorous classic that is perfect for summer. It's The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I really need to reread this actually because the first time I read it, I loved it. I'm sure you already know what this story is about, but it's set in the 1920s and it's set on Long Island, where our main character Nick moves into a bungalow and he becomes the neighbor of Gatsby, who is a multimillionaire, and he lives in this grand estate, and he has all of these huge parties all of the time, and he's basically obsessed with winning back the love of his life, Daisy, who is now married to someone else. This one is one of my favorite classics, and it's actually a relatively quick read. It has a lot of timeless themes to it, like the American dream and love and wealth and sort of the illusion of success, and it's also quite an interesting cast of characters. They're complex and flawed, a lot of them, and it also has that excellent thing going on in it where on the surface we have all of this glitz and glamour of the 1920s, but beneath the surface there is like longing and emptiness and broken dreams and just disillusionment. The vibe for this book though is probably pretty obvious. I feel like it needs a lot of glamour and champagne and of course like flappers, but also a sense of melancholy and sadness because that is a pretty big part of this book. I love the aesthetics of the 1920s though, and you really do get that vibe when you read the book as well. I also really like the writing in this, and the characters have really stuck with me. Like, this is a book that I think about often. Then we're back with a mystery with The Lost Man by Jane Harper, and in my opinion, no one does atmosphere quite like this author. Like, she's just amazing at it, and it really adds a lot to her books, and it does in this one as well. It's set in the outback in Australia, under the unrelenting sun. And when you read this book, you can really feel it. The mystery in here is about a man who is found miles from his vehicle by this legendary lonesome grave, and he's died out there because you can't survive without water and shelter, and it's like super isolated. And we follow his brother as he looks into what actually happened, and the suspicion is that maybe he was murdered. Like, it seems weird that this was an accident, and the brother is wondering if maybe the murderer is a part of his family. Throughout this book, we get to know this family and the brothers, and there's a lot of drama and intrigue and all kinds of difficult relationships within this family. It's definitely a slow burn, so just keep that in mind, but both the characters and the mystery and the setting is excellent, and again, the author just captures the atmosphere so well, and the desolation of the setting and how barren it is. You can really feel it. It's also, I think, quite a clever mystery, and it's sort of bunched up with all of this family intrigue and secrets, and the vibe is like hot and desolate and oppressive and so hot. And it has like a mysterious edge to it. I also personally just really like Harper's writing, and I think these kinds of books tend to be slower paced, and I think it fits the vibe of the book quite well because you sort of have time to soak it all in. Next, we have a modern classic, I guess you could call it. It's The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenedies. which I guess is a kind of coming of age story, and it takes place mainly in suburban Michigan in the 1970s. So we've got another 70s novel. The story is told through a group of neighborhood boys who spend their time obsessing over these 5 sisters, the Lisbon girls, and they all live in a quiet suburban town, and the youngest sister, like, the story sort of takes off when the youngest sister dies by suicide, and their strict religious parents become more and more controlling of these girls and start cutting them off from the outside world and isolating them. And the boys watch this all unfold from a distance, and eventually the sisters all end up taking their lives. And these boys later become men, still trying to sort of piece together what actually happened. This is a blend of a mystery and a tragedy, but it's also an exploration of beauty in a way, but it's a haunting kind of beauty. And it is kind of a bizarre story in some ways. It's a little uncomfortable and has like a surreal, melancholic vibe to it. And again, on the surface, we have these beautiful girls living in a quiet area of like suburban life, but beneath that, there is a lot going on, and a lot of it is, as always, a little dark. I do find it kind of difficult to describe this book. You kind of have to read it to get it, I feel, but it has a very interesting perspective and narrative voice that makes it quite captivating, I think. It also has like a dreamlike quality to it, and it's a bit of an uncommon coming of age story. And it is pretty tragic, so if you don't like tragic books, this isn't the one. Then we've got some romance with Call Me By Your Name by André, and you may know that I'm not the biggest romance reader, but when I really fall in love with a romance novel, this is what it's like. This one is set in the Italian Riviera in summer, also in the 70s if I remember correctly, which is obviously an excellent backdrop for a book to read in summer. And we meet this adolescent boy who has this life-defining romance with a summer guest of his parents, and the story follows them over the summer as this romance grows and intensifies. And I guess this is also a coming-of-age story in a way, all about love and growing up. What makes this book so good, in my opinion, is how raw and intensely emotional it is, and the writing, like the way that the writing captures the emotions and like the characters, it's just almost too much, and I just love it. I've never read this kind of writing almost like in any other place, and it's so good. And I remember when I read this book, it felt like I was reading something that was so intimate that I almost shouldn't be looking at it. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but it just feels so private to these characters, and it's so intense, but you also can't look away. The Italian summer is also captured beautifully, and the book feels like a full sensory experience in a way, and I just love this book. It's one of my favorites. It's gorgeous and complex and deep and obsessive, and it feels very honest and emotional. And I mean, there are some interesting scenes in here for sure, but I love the overall story, like the love, the desire, and this feeling of a summer romance that changes you as a person forever. Like, that's very much the vibe. I'm noticing I have a lot of historical fiction on my list. I don't know why, but I guess there's something about historical fiction and summer that just goes together for me. Maybe because there's something epic to it very often. Anyways, next we have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is set in North Carolina, and a part of the story takes place in 1969 when this popular man in town is found dead, and the townsfolk immediately suspect the infamous marsh girl who lives out in the marsh by herself. And then the rest of the story, we sort of spend time exploring this girl's life and just her whole story, which is both beautiful and super sad. Although we have this murder mystery in a way, the story is really focused on the main character, so I wouldn't call this a traditional mystery, if that makes sense. The mystery is more there to sort of bring things together. I don't know if that makes sense if you haven't read it, but I think what makes this book so magical is that it isn't just the main character who you feel like you really get to know in every way. It's also amazing because of the setting. Like, it's so atmospheric, and the way that the natural world is brought to life in this. Like, it's almost impossible to describe. Like, it's so good. I remember when I read this book, I felt like I could picture this whole story as a movie in my head. And I think I mentioned that when I reviewed this book. And it's just because of how everything came to life. And they did actually make a movie of this, which I remember when they announced it, I was like, wow, that's gonna be amazing. Yeah, no, that movie was not it, at least for me. And sometimes I use like movie stills in these mood boards, but the movie was not at all like the book. Well, not like I pictured the book, like especially like the visual aspect of it. And I think the movie had such a different vibe, and it just wasn't the impression that I had gotten of like the setting, but also the characters. And for me, the atmosphere in this book is really earthy and colorful in the way that nature is. And I feel like the movie really didn't capture that at all. The vibe of this is very much like nature, marshes, obviously. There's the main character drawing like the flora and the fauna where she lives. That's a huge part of the book. And then there's a sense of loneliness and this like coming of age in very particular settings, I guess. And all of this is sort of coming to a head with the mystery. I think this is a really great story, and if you like nature writing mixed in with like the stories that you read and you like this mix of coming of age, romance, and mystery, I think this is the perfect read. Then we have one of my all-time favorite books, which you can really read at any time of year, but I read it in summer and I just feel like that was the perfect time for it, so now I just sort of associate it with summer. It's Fresh Water for Flowers by Valérie Perrin. This is a book translated from French, and in it we follow the caretaker of this cemetery in a small town in France. And her life is very much marked by routine. She has visitors, some random, some regular, some colleagues, and she's in this very calm rhythm in her life until one day this man appears and he insists on depositing his mother's ashes on the gravesite of a complete stranger who turns out to be his mother's lover. That is like an accurate summary of the book, but I also feel like it doesn't capture the book at all because there is so much more going on in it. And I don't want to give too much away because I didn't know that much when I went into this book, and I felt like that really added something to it and like to the experience. So I don't want to give too much away. But we do explore a lot more in this book, in particular the life of the main character, and the themes in this book are all about love, loss, grief, and most importantly, resilience. The way this book is written really captured me though. Like, I did not want this book to end, and it's like poetic and heartfelt and hopeful at the same time as being desperately sad sometimes. And the atmosphere is excellent, and throughout it, we have this cemetery at the center and this house where the main character lives in France. And there's something nostalgic about it, and something romantic, and yes, something hopeful. And I just loved it so much. It is pretty rare that I read a book and I want it to be longer. Like, that very rarely happens to me, but like this is one of them because I was just so invested and I did not want it to end. And I really, really recommend it, especially if you like character-driven books. Moving on, we have another romance book, but this one is much lighter and it's just fun. It's Beach Read by Emily Henry, and this is obviously pretty well known. Like, Emily Henry is very popular these days. And although I don't love all of her books and I'm not the biggest romance reader, I did have a really good time with this one, and sometimes that's all you want from a book. It is also absolutely perfect for summer. It follows a romance writer who no longer believes in love, who goes to spend the summer at this beach house, and she ends up being neighbors with this other writer who is a much more serious dude. Like, where she writes happy endings, he like kills off the entire cast of his books. Like, they're very different. Both characters are dealing with writer's block though, and through various events they end up striking a deal, sort of challenging each other to write each other's genres. So the story is all about them over the summer trying to achieve this, and also obviously it's a romance book, so there is a romance blossoming. I think the reason that this worked for me is that there is a little bit more going on to this than just the romance, and I really liked how this book explored grief in particular. And I also just really liked the romance, actually. I think this author is really good at writing romantic tension, and I just found it to be really enjoyable. Very summery, the setting is excellent, and overall, it was just like a nice little book to get lost in when I needed a little bit of a break. Like, I feel like it's perfect for that. We're then back with another mystery, but we're still on the more lighthearted side of things with A Meditation on Murder by Robert Thorogood. And this is very much a mystery on the cozier side of things. Like, it's not the book that I would read if you want like a quote-unquote serious mystery novel. The story in here is set on a fictional Caribbean island where the leader of this spiritual retreat has been murdered in a locked room, and there were 5 other people in that room, and one of the people has already confessed to the murder. But the detective that we're following in this book, he feels like things don't quite add up, so he wants to investigate, and so he shows up to the crime scene all hot, bothered in his woolen suit. He is super British, and he just thinks that police officers should dress that way no matter the weather. And he is determined to track down the real killer. This is the kind of book that will make you chuckle. At least it made me chuckle, because the main character is so ridiculous, but like in the best way. It is just so funny seeing him going around on this island being all uptight, and everyone else are like super relaxed and taking it easy. And actually, maybe now that I think about it, maybe the reason that I find it so funny is that I kind of relate to the main character in a lot of ways because I also dislike the heat and like sand that gets everywhere. Like, there's definitely a connection there, although I don't wear wool in the summer because I'm not insane. The vibe of this is very much like tropical. It's a little quirky. There's a mystery, obviously, and I know that the book is based on a TV series, but I actually haven't seen it, so I'm just basing this on how I pictured the story. The island is a fantastic backdrop, though, and this really is just like an easy, enjoyable, entertaining, cozy whodunit with a bit of a twist. Second to last, we have a mystery thriller. It's The Fury by Alex Michaelides, which the setting of this really makes it perfect for the season because a lot of it takes place on this private Greek island, which is obviously a great backdrop. The story in here is about a reclusive ex-movie star who is super famous but has stepped away from the limelight, and every year she gathers her closest friends to escape the English weather, and they go to her private Greek island, and of course this is a mystery, so one year someone there is murdered, and there is a lot of drama. Now, this isn't like my favorite mystery, but the thing that I really liked about this one is not only the setting and the atmosphere, but the narrative voice, because it's the kind of book where we have a character telling us the story, and he addresses us as readers directly, and we're getting his side, and only his side, which is a very interesting perspective in this one. This is a thing that I really like in mystery books, and it's a little bit of a different way of getting the story, which I think is really cool. Obviously, the mood board for this needs to reflect this Greek island and like glamour in a way, but also dread and a little bit of like a sinister edge. There is a lot of obsession in this book and like secrets and unreliable stories, and they do also get stuck on this island because it's so windy, so that adds a lot of atmosphere too. Lastly, at the very end, we have another mystery, but this one has a little bit of like a gothic, dark academia edge to it. It's The Cloisters by Katy Hayes, and the atmosphere in this one is excellent, and it's set during the summer, so it's perfect. This one follows a girl who arrives in New York City hoping to spend the summer working as an associate at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but instead she finds herself assigned to a place called the Cloisters, which is like a Gothic museum and garden. And there she is drawn into a small circle of eccentric researchers. And our main character has left behind quite a troubled life, and she really longs for a group of friends, and so she goes along with some of their obsession with fortune telling, which runs quite a lot deeper than just like academic interest. Then there is this unexpected and devastating death that turns everything on its head, and they're all getting dragged into it. Now, the Met Cloisters is actually a real place, which is cool, and we'll have to incorporate some of the like images of that in there. And although the vibe of this is summery, it's very much like a gothic summer, if you know what I mean, with a lot of shadows and a slightly spooky garden and like dark libraries, and we need some tarot cards because that's kind of like a big part of the book, and it has like an occult feel to it, this whole mystery. Now, although this is a book that I probably liked more than I loved, the atmosphere in this really stuck with me. I still think about it whenever I think about atmospheric books, and it's a story about ambition and twisted friendship in a way that I thought was quite interesting. It is definitely a little bit of a slow burn, but it has like an mysterious, artsy academia vibe to it that I really loved and I still think about all the time. That was the last book though. That was everything that I had for you today. Now, I would love to know if you have any recommendations for books that are perfect for summer, especially if they have like a particular summery setting that you really liked. I would love to hear about it in the comments. That was it for today. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me, and I will see you soon. Bye!